The King's Avatar, Chapter 1644 The Final Choice. Audio source, wushaworldaudiobook.com. Chapter 1644, The Final Choice. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. In Season 7, Sun Xiang stepped on stage for the first time and immediately received widespread attention. Even though he came from a weak team like Conquering Clouds, his performance was exceptional, breaking through the rookie wall and easily collecting the Best Rookie award. At that time, Prodigy, the star of hope, all sorts of extravagant praise rained down upon him. Sun Xiang very quickly became pleased and satisfied by all this. Amidst all of this, there was much commentary about how if Sun Xiang weren't held back by the rest of his team, or if he had a top god-level character, then perhaps Sun Xiang would have had even better results in his first season, or even made history. Sun Xiang deeply appreciated this kind of talk. He also felt that his abilities hadn't reached their full potential, and that he needed a bigger space to shine. He need a better team, and he need a top-notch character. Battle God 1 Autumn Leaf was undoubtedly the most godly character in Glory, and Yichu, called the Glory textbook, was the top god in Glory history. But Sun Xiang didn't think that it was such a big deal. He of course knew of Yichu's past glory, but by the time he'd gotten into Glory, all he saw was the performance of Yichu and Excellent Era decline year by year. So, when Excellent Era extended an olive branch to him in Season 8, Sun Xiang was overjoyed. He felt that this was a match made in heaven. He needed exactly this kind of team, this kind of character. He came to Excellent Era, replaced Yichu, accepted the Battle God 1 Autumn Leaf. Sun Xiang was puffed up with pride. He felt that a new era was upon him. With this kind of top-notch team and character, he would immediately soar up into the sky. But that season, Excellent Era was relegated. No result was more painful than this. That season, even Conquering Clouds, who'd aspired for the playoffs while Sun Xiang was still there, hadn't fallen to that extent after Sun Xiang left. What had happened? Sun Xiang, whose professional career was still only 2 years, would be lying if he said he hadn't panicked. He had a top-notch character, a championship team. How could their final result be relegation? Where had they gone wrong? Was his own skill not enough? No. Of course that couldn't be the reason. At that time, Sun Xiang was already beginning to doubt himself, but he was unwilling to believe it. He was unwilling to ponder this question seriously. He was anxious to prove himself, and he had considered leaving Excellent Era sooner, but the team's quick actions after becoming relegated ultimately convinced him to place his expectations on this team. But then, that season, in the Challenger League finals, Excellent Era lost to Happy. He lost again. He lost to Yichu, lost to this person that he'd squeezed out of Excellent Era, the guy who'd lost everything. Top-tier characters. Happy had none. An incredible roster. Happy didn't have that, either. Just by relying on this kind of team, Yichu was able to defeat Sun Xiang and Excellent Era. This wasn't just the victory and defeat of one match, nor the victory and defeat of an entire season. This completely destroyed Sun Xiang's sense of what had value in Glory. With a top-tier character and strong teammates, he could soar right up into the sky. This was what Sun Xiang had always believed. And Happy had none of these things. And yet, Happy won. From Best Rookie, to transferring to a top powerhouse, in the span of a short year and a half, Sun Xiang had experienced the Xing peak of life that countless people would never reach. And then in the next year and a half, relegation, failure in the Challenger League. This was a blow that many pro players had never experienced. 3 years. In the first 3 years of his professional career, Sun Xiang had experienced many things. But when he looked back, he discovered that he was still so far away from the playoffs, never mind the final stage. Wasn't he a prodigy? Wasn't he brimming with talent? Wasn't he the star of tomorrow? Excellence era disbanded, and Sun Xiang and One Autumn Leaf joined Samsara. He still controlled the top character, he had even stronger teammates by his side. This was the 2 consecutive championship Master of Kings. Amidst the grey of his professional career, a new chance came to turn things around. In fact, it could be said that he'd reached an even higher level. But this time, Sun Xiang would not be the arrogant and complacent person he was before. He began to attentively scrutinize himself, study how he could become better. He did well. He swiftly integrated with the rest of Team Samsara. It wasn't like how many commentators had warned, where there might be internal conflicts because of issues about the core position. He and Zhou Zekai, one close and one long range, their double one partnership ultimately took the Best Partners award for this season. He finally fixed his attitude. And in this season's battles, he once again met Happy, once again met Yi Xiu. And again, they met in the finals, facing off directly against each other. WuxaWorldAudio.com. This battle had even given them an appropriate map, inevitable confrontation. Sun Xiang wanted to win. He wanted to defeat Happy, and wanted to defeat Yi Xiu even more. He admitted that it was thanks to Yi Xiu and Happy that he had woken up, but this only made him want to defeat them even more. He hoped to let all of Happy, let Yi Xiu see, that he was no longer the Sun Xiang that they had defeated before. And so he was cautious, he was prudent, he didn't allow himself to make any mistake in this match. It was for the sake of Samsara's victory, and at the same time it was to fiercely prove himself in front of the person who had defeated him before. In the end, he had still ended up in such a pathetic position. But this time, he wasn't angry, wasn't resentful, wasn't like before, where he found fault in everything except himself. Immediately, he began to evaluate himself, and he realized perhaps he had used the wrong method. Caution, psychological battle, these weren't his strengths, but in order to prove himself, he still chose to use this playstyle that didn't quite suit him. Even though he very much hoped that he could surpass Yi Xiu in all aspects, in reality, everyone had their strengths and weaknesses. Sun Xiang's strengths didn't lay in these areas. He should choose to use the playstyle that he was good at. Because, on the battlefield, his goal was to win, not to surpass. The only thing that people need to surpass was themselves. Following his own footsteps, one step after another surpassing himself. Only then would he become stronger and stronger. Yi Xiu, or anyone, they should not be targets to be surpassed. Rather, they should be defeated. Shattering the Lands. A level 75 skill, this was Sun Xiang's final choice. In the face of uncertainty regarding the NPC's attitude toward the players, he was no longer careful, he was no longer trying to think it over carefully, because those were not his strengths. He could not become one of those players who relied on their minds to fight. He took the initiative in attacking the NPCs. Shattering the Land sent magic energy surging through the ground, causing these obstacles in front of him to go flying into the air. These people in my way, all of you can die. In this instant, the imposing aura that One Autumn Leaf displayed was just like the battle god under Yi Xiu's hands back in the day. End chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1645. One Autumn Leaf's Strongest State. Audio source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1645. One Autumn Leaf's Strongest State. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. The event NPCs were interference, but at the same time they could be used. If used well, this could be an extremely intelligent match. In the past, Sun Xiang had thought that he was all-powerful, that there was nothing he couldn't do in glory. But now, he could admit that these games involving lots of calculations weren't his strong point. So, he didn't bother with thinking about whether these things could be any use to him. If it's interference, then wipe it away. Shattering the lands tossed the nearby NPCs into the air. Off-stage, the players from the two teams were seizing the chance to observe. Without clashing with the NPCs like this, it would be very difficult to judge how strong they were. Aside from that, how would these NPCs react to someone taking the initiative to attack them? Before this, the two armies seemed to have mostly ignored the presence of Lord Grimm and One Autumn Leaf. While the two of them had been climbing the mountain wall, the NPCs hadn't specifically directed any attacks toward the two of them. But right now, after being directly attacked like this, if the NPCs still had no reaction, then this event's design would be fairly boring. Glory, this classic game, would never have that kind of meaningless design, whether in-game or on a competitive map. Indeed, after being attacked by Sun Xiang's One Autumn Leaf, the two teams of NPCs no longer ignored them. Both sides suddenly had a clear attack target: One Autumn Leaf. Cannon shots, magic spells. One Autumn Leaf had already cleared the area immediately surrounding him, so the first attacks that arrived were all long-range. Aside from those that caused damage, there were also a few curses with controlling effects. The class composition of these NPCs was quite well-rounded. But Sun Xiang had predicted this possibility. When the attacks reached him, the end animation of shattering the lands had completed. One Autumn Leaf darted forward like an arrow, leaving many attacks behind him. At the same time, he swung his arm again, tossing forth a tyrant's destruction toward the NPCs falling from the air like dumplings. A streak of dark light. The many NPCs tumbling in front of One Autumn Leaf were swept aside by the tyrant's destruction. Each of them flew backward toward the mountain wall, where Yi Xu's Lord Grimm was still cheerfully watching the show. Sun Xiang didn't forget who his opponent was, he didn't forget the goal of this battle. While sweeping away this disruption, he was already beginning to attack Yi Xu. Sun Xiang had turned the NPCs into human cannonballs, but the blowback of the tyrant's destruction wasn't very strong. These human cannonballs didn't fly very quickly, and could be blocked by any casual attack. Even using a grab skill to throw these cannonballs back at One Autumn Leaf would be a very simple thing to do. But Yi Xu chose to dodge. Lord Grimm jumped down from his original position, once again displaying the capabilities of the ninja too. Lord Grimm climbed along the cliff face, carefully avoiding all of the NPCs that Sun Xiang sent toward him. What is this guy doing? The pro players couldn't quite understand. Sun Xiang was already suffering attacks from the NPCs that he'd been harassing. This was a perfect chance to add oil to the fire and grab victory. But Yi Xu still stayed out of it, looking like his only plan was to watch the show. The watching pro players were confused. And then, when those NPCs sent flying by the shattering the lands finally crashed back down against the ground, another wave of long-range attacks came toward him, and close-range fighters rushed toward him as well. Seeing the movements of the NPCs, the pro players suddenly understood. This guy is too sneaky. Everyone exclaimed. Yi Xu could have begun his offensive now, but he chose not to, solely because he didn't want to draw the aggro of the NPCs. Right now, the NPCs were already moving against One Autumn Leaf. If Lord Grimm attacked One Autumn Leaf at a time like this, it would be very easy for Sun Xiang to direct his attack onto an NPC. And so, he chose to avoid it all. He had no conflict with any of the NPCs, nor did he give Sun Xiang the chance to create such conflict. This sort of sensitivity to the aggro of NPCs was really something that could only be trained after spending large amounts of time in-game. The high and mighty pro players clearly weren't sensitive enough to this, to the extent that not a single one of them had immediately recognized Yi Shu's intention. The battle continued, but it had already become a struggle between Sun Xiang and the NPCs. Yi Shu's Lord Grim perched upon the wall unscathed as he watched the battle, and then it became time for his trash talk. Right, right, left, left, above. Nice reactions. 14 o'clock direction. That's just 2 o'clock. Ha, tricked you. Him, you didn't believe it. Messages flashed non-stop in the channel. Looking down from above, Yi Shu gave pointers on the chaotic battle between Sun Xiang and the NPCs. The Samsara fans felt tightness in their chest. Most of them felt that this battle wouldn't turn out well for Sun Xiang. However, the pro players didn't have such a simple view of the problem. They quickly noticed that even though Sun Xiang was amidst all this chaos, one autumn leaf wasn't suffering very serious injuries, and was in fact getting braver and braver as he fought. The NPCs aren't very strong, the pro players said. This was the reason why their opinion was different from that of ordinary gamers. Because their skill levels were different, their worldviews were different. Surrounded by so many NPCs, ordinary gamers would think that this was a death sentence. But for a pro player, this was still a situation that they could deal with. There was another point, too. The NPCs didn't forget about their own battle just because of the interference of Sun Xiang. Right now, they were still attacking each other as well, and Sun Xiang was very cleverly able to take advantage of this. That silhouette amidst the chaotic battle became clearer and clearer. Around him swirled all sorts of magic energy. Neutral chases, light chases, dark chases, fire chases, ice chases. 5 types of chases, 5 colors. Right now, one autumn leaf was adding them up without interruption. WooshaWorldAudio.com. Aside from this, there was a gold aura surrounding him, so bright that it practically outshone the light of those 5 types of chasers. Battle Spirit. The awakening skill of the Battle Mage, a status activated after enough combos. After the level 75 upgrade, it could reach 8 stages. It was a classic skill that was loved by countless players in-game. And right now, the blinding golden light that flashed around one autumn leaf was that of the 8th stage. It had been extremely rare to see in this professional season, especially in a 1v1. 8th stage Battle Spirit required a 150-hit combo. Such a steep requirement, there was practically no chance of it appearing in an individual battle. An opponent that you could hit a 150-hit combo on was basically a wooden dummy. By that point, activating Battle Spirit would basically be pointless. Because of this, many pro Battle Mage players wouldn't add many points to this skill. Awakening skills were all extremely strong, and costed a significant amount of skill points. But who was one autumn leaf? This was the character named the Battle God, the number 1 character in Glory. His battle spirit had definitely been leveled up to the max. Before, Yi Shu had used this character. After Sun Xiang received it, with his kind of personality, he believed that he could do anything that Yi Shu could, so he didn't adjust the points on Battle Spirit. The level 75 update came around, adding another rank to the skill, going from a max 7 stages to 8. The Sun Xiang that arrived at Samsara was already beginning to re-evaluate himself. Still, he didn't erase the points on the Battle Spirit skill. This kind of skill, relying on technique to increase battle power, he felt that it suited his style very well. It was very difficult to reach that high of a rank in a solo battle, but there was still a chance in a team round. It would still be difficult, but Yi Shu had done it back in the day. Even though many people believed that battle spirit wasn't practical on the professional stage, in the hearts of the battle mage players, this was still a glory that belonged to them. To ignite the brilliant fire of the highest rank battle spirit on stage. This was something that every battle mage player had dreamed of, even though most would only put a few points into the skill in the end. And Sun Xiang, he dared turn this dream into reality. He wanted to light up with the flaming golden light of battle spirit. And today, he accomplished it. Even though it had been convenient with the setup of this map. If he hadn't had this kind of goal from the beginning, perhaps today's One Autumn Leaf would only have a second or third rank battle spirit. He wouldn't be aflame with such a glorious battle aura. This time, Yi Shu played around for too long, huh? The various pro players exclaimed. The NPC's battle ability wasn't anything incredible, they hadn't completely controlled Sun Xiang. One Autumn Leaf paid a bit of price in health, but he managed to ignite the strongest state of the battle mage. If this continued, these NPCs wouldn't be any obstacle at all, and Yi Shu would have to face a One Autumn Leaf that had reached an incredible level of power. This was something that even he, as One Autumn Leaf's creator, had never witnessed before. End chapter. The King's Avatar, Chapter 1646. What is your intent? Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1646. What is your intent? Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Sky Strike, Falling Flower Palm. A small combo created from low-level skills. Falling Flower Palm's powerful blow-away sent one NPC into the air, crashing toward Lord Grimm, who was still hanging onto the wall. The offensive against Yi Shu resumed. As the saying went, Yi Shu had tried riding a tiger and now found it hard to get off. At least, this was what many pro players thought. He hadn't acted first because he'd been concerned about drawing the aggro of the NPCs. He'd hoped the NPC's battle ability could wear out Sun Xiang. But no one had thought that these NPCs were so weak. From the very start, they hadn't dealt much damage to One Autumn Leaf. Instead, they'd served to buff One Autumn Leaf. 5 types of chases. Golden Battle Spirit. One Autumn Leaf was in his peak state right now, the highest peak he'd ever reached in these 10+ years. And right now, the one he was attacking was the one who had brought him into this world, Yi Shu. What should Yi Shu do? He hadn't attacked at first, and if he attacked now, he would still attract the NPC's aggro. If, under the interference of the NPCs, he was then attacked by this One Autumn Leaf in peak form, he really should have just acted earlier. Now that things were at this point, maybe his best option was just to continue avoiding battle. This was what everyone was thinking. But this time, Yi Shu didn't control Lord Grimm to continue dodging. Even though Falling Flower Palm's blow-away effect was strong enough to send a character flying this high, the character would only fly slower and slower. By the time it arrived, it posed no threat. Lord Grimm stretched out his hand and easily grabbed the NPC. With a fling, he tossed it back at One Autumn Leaf below. Everyone was caught off guard. They thought that this was the really worst decision. Yi Shu surely would have calculated this, right? What was this guy planning now? The pro players in the audience began to ponder this, but on stage, Sun Xiang didn't think twice. He had already decided to stop trying to engage in mental battles against Yi Shu. He was focusing all of his energy in carrying out his offensive. No matter how Yi Shu would respond, there was only one plan in his heart: knock him down, get rid of obstacles, knock him down. Dodge. One autumn leaf dodged the NPC that Lord Grim tossed at him. Evil Annihilation flashed out, sweeping up another NPC, and throwing this human cannonball at Lord Grim once again. And when Lord Grim grabbed the NPC, he immediately attracted the attention of all the NPCs, and a few long-range attacks were already beginning to point toward him. Boom! A round of cannon fire came toward him first. Yishu, who'd predicted this, was already controlling Lord Grim to dodge. When the NPC that one autumn leaf had thrown came toward him, Lord Grim dodged again. Sun Qiang was already beginning to attack Yishu, but he wasn't in a hurry to rush up to him. He was continuing to spend a lot of effort dealing with the NPCs that came at him, and whenever he had the chance, he would keep throwing these NPCs at Lord Grim. No matter how good Yishu's technique was, this kind of struggle on the side of a mountain wall was still more difficult than the freedom of movement that being on the ground offered. Facing the combination of attacks thrown at him by Sun Qiang and the NPCs, he soon found himself too busy to deal with them all. Why bother? The pro players once again expressed their confusion. If he was still going to dodge the attacks, then why do that grab and fling earlier, inviting so many attacks upon himself? It wasn't like he couldn't have dodged that, and if he dodged, then he'd only have to deal with Sun Qiang right now. If he only had to deal with the human cannonballs that one autumn leaf was tossing at him, Yishu could easily keep controlling Lord Grim to dodge, all the way until the end. I don't understand. Practically everyone was shaking their heads. They couldn't figure out what Yishu was planning. As for the televised broadcast, the commentators were even quieter. If even the pro players couldn't see the intention, how could Pan Lin and Li Yibo dare discuss it? They might as well pretend that this question didn't exist. Only Zhang Xinji, Team Tyranny's Zhang Xinji, the Zhang Xinji who never overlooked any detail, appeared to have a thought. What is it? Han Wenqing asked. He understood his teammates, and seeing him like this, he knew that Zhang Xinji hadn't thought of something. When he asked this, the surrounding players who had heard all looked over. Everyone wanted an answer to this question. The ambushing troops atop the cliffs will likely act soon. Zhang Xinji. Oh. Everyone looked at the screen. From the aerial viewpoint, they could see the NPCs atop the cliffs. After the two armies of NPCs had appeared, they had also started moving, but it looked like nothing but preparation. Even now, there was no sign that these NPCs were about to attack. How could Zhang Xinji tell? It's not clear what the condition is for activating their ambush, but imagine that it is one of two options. 1. That it's time-based, and once a certain time is reached they activate. 2. That it depends on the damage taken by the NPCs, and once they suffer enough damage, they come and sweep the field for good, Zhang Xinji analyzed. Everyone had seen the map introduction earlier. The hidden troops weren't on equal footing as the two groups of NPCs down below. They could be considered the final victors of this battle. They were waiting for the two armies to wear each other down, and then, without any risk to themselves, they could descend and wipe out both sides. Yishu is waiting for this. Someone asked. It seems so. During the intro video, I took note of the time the ambush began and the number of NPCs left on both sides. Both conditions will be fulfilled soon, said Zhang Xinji. But so what if he waits until these ambushing troops activate? How will that change the situation? Someone wondered. Zhang Xinji didn't answer. He simply continued to think deeply. Clearly, this was a question that he hadn't found the answer to yet, either. Judging from the time that Yishu began to attack the NPCs, it should have something to do with the hidden troops, but Zhang Xinji also couldn't determine how they could be useful to Yishu. They were only ambushing troops, they weren't his reinforcements. They would attack all of their enemies, and they wouldn't go out of their way to avoid attacking Lord Grimm or One Autumn Leaf. It was more likely that the ambushing troops would also treat them as targets to be destroyed. What was Yishu thinking? At this moment, atop the canyon, a small rock was suddenly carelessly pushed by an NPC. The rock tumbled down without anyone noticing, and even when it reached the ground, it didn't attract any attention. However, it seemed as though this were a signal, for the NPCs hidden on both sides of the canyon suddenly began to move. They didn't make any greeting. As soon as they appeared, a wave of boulders was pushed down. Boom, 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 boom. The sound of tumbling boulders echoed through the canyon, and a number of NPCs were hit and directly smashed into pulp. The NPCs also began to use all sorts of long-range glory skills to attack. With this ambush, the canyon instantly fell into complete and utter chaos. But the two ground armies didn't seem to be in too much of a panic. Those who could were immediately counterattacking the NPCs above. The close-range NPCs were still fighting amongst each other below, and they didn't forget about Lord Grimm and One Autumn Leaf, either. There were still NPCs tangled around One Autumn Leaf, but most of Sun Xiang's attention was on Lord Grimm. WuxRWorldAudio.com. The activation of the ambushing troops. He'd seen this scene as well. The NPCs on the ground wouldn't be able to last too long, and after that, it was unclear whether or not the ambushing troops would continue to attack them. For now, it seemed like their attacks were aimed at the two players' characters as well as the other NPCs. Sun Xiang didn't care about any of this, nor did he think about how he could use this situation to his advantage. He was focused entirely on Lord Grimm. When this ambush rained down, Yishu had no way of keeping Lord Grimm perched on the cliffside, and Lord Grimm finally landed on the ground. Charge. One Autumn Leaf charged. Lord Grimm charged. Amidst the chaos, as attacks rained down upon him from all sides, the two of them were still focused on their true opponent. Swift and fierce, they rushed toward each other. Tyrant's destruction. Sun Xiang had One Autumn Leaf to unleash a Tyrant's destruction. A 180-degree sweep, pushing away 3 NPCs at once. But Yishu wasn't that easy to deal with. Lord Grimm unsheathed his sword, Collapsing Mountain. He actually used this skill to jump right over the Tyrant's destruction, and came crashing down toward One Autumn Leaf. Retreat. One Autumn Leaf retracted the skill and backed away. 5 types of chases. Stage 8 Battle Spirit. One Autumn Leaf's power and speed were both at the peak, and his movements were nimble like never before. Facing this kind of One Autumn Leaf, surrounded by hostile NPCs. Under these conditions, Yishu actually still wanted to fight him directly. What was he thinking? The pro players were all incredibly anxious. They believed that Yishu had calculations. They believed that he wouldn't just fight an unprepared battle like this. There must be something here that they had all overlooked. Upward slash. The collapsing mountain missed, so Lord Grimm swiftly swung his sword into an upward slash. But Draconic Crusher, Evil Annihilation swung down with all the power of Mount Tai. The accumulation of so many buffs gave him incomparable speed. Under normal conditions, a battle mage would have no way of displaying a Draconic Crusher that was even faster than an upward slash. Draconic Crusher had very high priority. Never mind one upward slash, even if there had been 5 Blade Masters doing upward slash together, they would still be slammed down by this Draconic Crusher. Boom. Evil Annihilation struck the ground. This attack had cleaved Lord Grimm from head to toe. But Lord Grimm hadn't fallen. Evil Annihilation had simply passed right through his body. Shadow Steps. At last, the first skill that Yishu had chosen to add to his weapon for the final match was revealed. The Blade Master skill Shadow Steps. But one autumn leaf's draconic crusher had come so quickly that there was no way Yishu had activated that skill then. Shadow steps had perhaps been used even before the collapsing mountain. Yishu had simply used the skill so quickly that when the skill was used, the shadows hadn't even had the chance to fan out before he'd already completed the controls for collapsing mountain. With this collapsing mountain, the one who'd leapt forward was still one person. But by the time he came down, the shadow steps had fully taken effect, and the one Lord Grimm who finished the collapsing mountain was a shadow, one of the 4 Lord Grimms. By the time evil annihilation had pierced Lord Grimm's head, Sun Xiang already realized that something was wrong. He immediately wanted to cancel this skill and adjust, but by the time he did the controls to cancel the skill, the draconic crusher had already struck the ground. Moonlight / full moonlight / 2 streaks of blade light flashed, leaving 2 streaks of blood on one autumn leaf's body, lifting him up into the air. Do you have enough experience to control a one autumn leaf in this state? Yishu asked in the chat. End chapter.